Chapter 10 is about using the println method or println function, and it's another small lesson. And the reason it's small and the reason it's here is because I wrote the book just like you and I would be in a classroom together. And so this is something I would teach you very early on because you want to use println for almost all of the examples that follow. So it's just important to just show it very quickly. And to show it, I will switch over to the Scala REPL. And so all you do with it's just another, like I said, it's a method or a function. So you just type in something like println hello. Hello is enclosed in double quotes, so it's a string. And so that just shows how it prints to the output there. And then just like in other languages, you can combine or concatenate two strings with the plus symbol like that. And that's not the best way to do things in Scala, but it's good enough for right now. So that shows that. And also you can print other things, which is another important thing. I don't think I cover that in the book, but that shows how to print an integer. This one shows how to print a double. You can even print a something like a true or false value, because that one's a Boolean. So what's going on here is, again, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, Scala is both a functional programming language and it's also an object-oriented programming language. So each of these things that I'm creating here is an object. So this is a string object, string with a capital S. The number 1 is an integer or int, int. 1.1 is a double, and true is a Boolean. So what's going on here is each one of these things are objects, and each of these objects has a toString method. So when I'm calling println on these objects, that's what happens. That's how this works, or how it's printed, is it's calling the toString method on each of those different object types. And something I mentioned right here is that println prints a string or all those other object types followed by a new line character. And there's no really good way to show that in the REPL, but there's also a print command, or I'm sorry, a print function or method, and it's not followed by a new line character. And so this is hard to show in the REPL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop out of the REPL. We'll go back over here and get out of there. Let me clear that. And then I've created a couple of scripts here, so I will cat this first one, the print and println one. And what I do here is I use println on these two, and then I use print on these two. So println again has a new line character afterwards. Print does not. And this is a nice place for Scala CLI because I created this as a little script right here. So now I can run this script with Scala CLI, and you'll see the difference between println and print. In this case, you'll also get to see something with Scala CLI because I haven't really used it much today. It goes ahead and starts the bloop daemon, and you see that output, and then you see the output from the script. So let me go ahead and start that again so we don't have to see that output. And now you can just see that the first two print lines are on separate lines, but then when I use print, it printed everything together. And I will cat that script one more time so you can see that. 2 print lines, 1 print, and then you see 2 print lines and the 2 print statements there. And then the next thing I mentioned, and the last thing, again, this is a small lesson, but the next thing I mentioned is the difference between standard out and standard error. So println prints to what we call standard out. So I'm speaking here from a Unix Linux perspective. So maybe a good way to say it is println is where you just kind of print normal output. So anytime things are going well, you just use println and it prints the standard out. But when you want to print the standard error, which is where you normally print error messages, you'll use system.error.println. And again, this is hard to show in the REPL, but I can show it here at the command line. So I have this other script here. And what I do is I have a println here, and then I follow that with a system.error.println. So I can run that again with Scala CLI, and I will run the standard out script. And you can't tell any difference right there, right? Because it prints both of those, hello and yikes. But now what I can do, if you know your Unix, I can redirect standard error to dev null, which is also called the bit bucket. And so what this does, it prints the standard out here. And then what I did here is I redirected standard error to dev null. And if that's not clear enough, let me do one more thing. Let me remove those two files. So now nothing up my sleeve. You can see there's no files there. And what I can do is run Scala CLI on that script. I will redirect standard out to a file called standard out. And then I redirect standard error to a file called standard error. So now when I run the script, you'll see no output on the command line. And then when I cat standard out, you'll see that output. And then when I cat standard error, you'll see that that output went there. And so again, if we go back to what that script looks like, oops, go back to that script, you can see standard out, standard error here, and those went to these two different files. And finally, the last thing to mention is that at the end of that chapter, I suggest that you go here for the exercises, and that will take you here. And I have these print line exercises here. And so you would come in here, what's the name of the function that prints a string to standard out? And you can type that, check my answer, yay, I am correct. And then next exercise, and so on and so forth. So again, that's the whole purpose of the book, is to show you how to do things in very small lessons, then run the examples that are included in the book in the GitHub repository, and then come here and run the exercises. So again, that was chapter number 10 from my book, Learn Scala 3 the Fast Way, and this was about using the print line method. My name is Alvin Alexander, and I hope you enjoyed this.